So your marriage, that first marriage didn't work out. Is there anything worth talking about there, or how long did that last?
It lasted for 12 years.
Okay.
Actually, as I look back now, we weren't ready for marriage. I wasn't, nor was he. We
Yeah.
were, we didn't even. I don't think we even fell in love. But there was that pressure when you come from a mission. Oh, you got to get married. When are you going to get married? So we kind of, went with that and ended up getting married. It was just like, a good curriculum, if you will. He was a former missionary, both raised in the church and all that. We just thought, looked at each other and thought, why not? But it wasn't even close to enough to get, to jump into a commitment like a marriage, especially when it's an eternal marriage. So.
Yeah, and that's Mormon culture is you just dive in and get married. And if you follow the church's plan, hopefully you're so busy that whether or not the marriage is good, the marriage kind of stays intact, right?
Yes, exactly.
But for you guys, it didn't work out.
Oh, no, it didn't. I started, noticing some weird behavior from him. And, I would ask him what was going on. He'd say, no, there's nothing going on and all that. And I still decided to file for divorce, even though I wasn't sure what was going on, but I knew there was something. And then a couple months later, after I filed for the divorce, he confessed me that he was having an affair. So, but yeah, I mean, of course, I didn't have the support of anyone, nor my family or leaders. They would say, "What are you doing? Why are you doing that?" And I said, I don't know, but I just feel like it's over. There's nothing else left. So.
Hmm. And I imagine having had your mom go through that, and I'm the child of divorce. I imagine you were pretty motivated to not fall into the same fate. Is that true?
Absolutely. Yes. The difference between me and her is that I was more prepared. Let's put it this way. I was pretty much being the main supporter of the family financially. I was paying for the mortgage. I had, financially, I was in a much better position than he was, so I wasn't afraid about that. I had no fear whatsoever. I knew myself and my kids would be just fine if we just let him go. At least, financially. I knew that emotionally it would be a wreck, which it was. It always is, I guess.
Yeah. Leah writes, I gave up my career as soon as I got married, never finished college, and felt I wasn't valued in the workforce after taking 6 years off to parent. It's difficult when you step out of the church and see how decisions were laid out for you as a woman. Can you relate to Leah?
I can. And, when I really felt that my marriage was falling apart, I started getting ready. I immediately went back to college and I, started taking the lead of everything in the house. And I said, okay, this is it. I'm back to college and we're going to do this. And I finished college after I was already divorced. But yes, I can relate to that, definitely.
And with how many children again?
2 kids.
Wow. So you went back to college as a single mom with 2 kids.
Yes, I did.
That sounds like a miracle.
Yes, it was. It was hard, but, it worked out. So I had to do it.
Yeah. Well, and tell me again what you studied.
I studied English.
Okay. And so just like a bachelor's degree equivalent in English?
Yes, bachelor's degree in English.
Okay. And so tell us kind of where that took you.
Well, then here I was divorced with my 2 kids. My ex-husband had already moved out to the north of Brazil because that's where his parents are from. And I was in the south with my 2 kids and feeling extremely vulnerable, lost. And oh my gosh, it's just, it's overwhelming. And then I thought, I think we need a fresh start. And then I started thinking about coming to America, spending some time here, and study the language a little more and get my kids learning too. Since I was very well employed too, I started saving up money. I got our visas and we came to America in 2010, my kids and I.
I imagine that's not easy, that not everyone who wants to come to America can.
No, it's not easy. I was, in Brazil, I was a manager in a water park. So I had a kind of a prestigious job, let's say. And I knew if I came here, I'd have to do what Latinas do, which is cleaning services. I was aware of that. But I was willing to pay the price to just get out of that hole of, the divorce caused in my heart and my kids' heart. I knew we needed a fresh start. I knew we needed something else to focus our attention on and move on. And I knew that if we'd stay there, it would be much harder on us.
When you say water park, does that mean what I think it is? That like a big amusement park with water slides and stuff?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, you'd been a manager
For,
there?
yes, for 8 years, the last 8
Oh,
years.
wow. Okay, okay.
Hmm.
And did you identify as Latina or not?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, okay. So when you came here on the visa with your two kids, how did you, I bet the church was an incredible support for you.
Well, yes and no, because I wasn't counting on that. Some people called that pride. I called that self sufficiency, whatever. But I wasn't really counting on that. And we really didn't need anything from the church, which makes me happy. So we kind of came to see how things would go. We came with a tourist visa. So we thought, okay, we can even stay or go back. And then we ended up staying. So.
Okay, so how did you, real quick, just profession wise, what did you end up? How did your career follow?
Well, then, just something that I forgot to mention.
Yeah,
The church was a good support in terms of community. That's for sure. Yes, we felt like we had a family here. You know what I mean? So that
and
was.
where'd you move to?
We moved to Sandy.
Oh, wow, Sandy. I was just mentioning Sandy randomly or Draper.
Yes, I know. That was funny. Yeah.
Okay. All
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
So you go to Sandy. Did you have like mission? How did you make your first contact there? Did you contact old companions? Did you just find an apartment? Like, what does someone coming from Brazil do in Utah to kind of establish themselves?
So in my case, my sister has a sister-in-law who lived here already for many years. And, I kind of looked up some apartments online and I chose one and I asked her to rent it for me to have the paperwork done. So when we got here, we could, move into the apartment right away for at least 6 months because that's what our visa was valid for. And then that's what we did. We came in and lived in the apartment and started with, a couple of mattresses and a table and started living. So,
But I imagine that commitment of rent, that's a lot of money in US dollars, right?
yes, I had a very good savings for that. I thought, okay, I had enough money to support myself and my kids here. If I didn't get any job, we had enough money to make it through for about 6 months.
Okay, wow, that's really impressive.
Yes, yes, I was really prepared because I thought, what if I get there and I don't get a job immediately? So I was ready.
Okay, so you just joined a Sandy Ward, right? A Utah
Hmm.
Sandy Ward.
Yes, and then I opened a little business of cleaning services and started from there.
Just cleaning people's homes?
Yes.
And did your ward provide you with referrals and relationships and
Nope, not really.
okay.
My sister-in-law helped me with the first client, the very first referral, and from there I just went on.
And what's that like to be cleaning? And this is going to sound, what I'm trying to do is build empathy. You're from a foreign country. Maybe your English when you arrive here isn't, fantastic. And you're sort of cleaning houses for what I guess are kind of wealthier, Mormons, right?
Yes.
How did they treat you? What was that like to be an educated professional person who then has to go to another country and basically clean toilets for rich white Americans?
I really didn't care, John. I was so focused on, my kids and myself well-being that I really didn't care. My very first client, she's still my client nowadays. She is an amazing Mormon mom and friend, and they treat me with so much respect. I've never felt any, discrimination or anything. Of course, sometimes, some days I would wake up and think to myself, what the heck am I doing here? Why am I doing this to myself? Because it was hard, especially in the very beginning. It was hard. Yes, it was. And I even thought about going back to Brazil at the beginning because I thought, this is so tiring. I've never worked as a cleaner in my own country. Now I'm doing this here and I just got my degree. Why in the world am I doing it? But when I embrace something, when I go for something, it takes me a lot to give up. And then I thought, no, I'm going to go until I cannot handle it anymore. So.
Okay. So, you did end up getting remarried, right?
Yes, I did.
How long did that take? And was it to a Mormon?
Yes. So we met online. I was living here for about 2.5 years or so. And then we met. I was still active in the church, and I wanted a believing Mormon. I wanted to get married in the temple again. So, yes.
And so you did.
I did. It was a nightmare to get my first sealing canceled.
What'd you have to do?
I had to fill up a lot of forms. I had to write a very extensive letter explaining my motives to be requesting the cancellation of my sealing. I had to have a letter from my husband. Oh, I'm sorry, the phone is ringing here. My ex-husband had to write a letter where he would agree with the cancellation. And then, the whole process took about a year. And then they allowed us to get married in the temple again. After a year, we were married.
Okay, so your second husband, you married him civilly first, then you married him in the temple after a year, and it was a huge headache.
Yes, in the Salt Lake Temple. Oh, yes, it was a headache. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. And is this person someone you're still married to?
What's that?
Are you still married to this person now?
Oh, yes, we've been married for 4 years now.
4 years.
Yes.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, though, he didn't have to cancel his sealing to his first wife.
Oh, that's how it works. Because if a woman if she isn't going to get sealed to another man, she stays with whoever, because we need everyone to get sealed to everybody, basically.
Exactly. And he gets to have 2 or 3 or who knows how many in the next life, right?
Yep. Yeah, so Mormons do still believe and practice polygamy.
Yes.
Just in a slightly different way. Okay, so this is 4 years ago you come to the United States.
I came to the United States 7 years ago.
7 years ago. So there was 3 years before you met your husband. You've been married 4 years since. Okay.
Yes.
So 4 years ago you get married to your husband.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So when did if there's any other stories you want to tell, the next thing that comes to my mind is kind of how your faith crisis started happening. But is there anything else you want to tell about being in America, married? And is your husband from the United States, your second husband?
He is born and raised in the church, the LDS Church.
And was there any, and you were believers when you got married, and so were you treated well as a Brazilian marrying a North American?
Absolutely. Oh, yes. His family was fantastic to us.
Well, it sounds, I talked to you a tiny bit before this interview about, whether you experienced anger in your transition, and you said you did. And so I'm surprised, because let me just recount for you. Your mother has this terrible divorce when you're young. The church is kind of there for you. You're able to find community and support all through your youth. You serve this fantastic mission. Um, you you decide to come to the United States. You're able to come here. You're treated extra well by the Mormons as you start up your business in Sandy. Then you marry another believing returned missionary and in the temple eventually. And then all his family treats you well. So this sounds like a dream. It sounds like a Mormon Brazilian girl's dream.
Okay, that's what makes me even angrier, and I'll tell you why.
All right. So tell us the story. You can go back and tell us how things unraveled.
First off, I love the Mormon community. Okay, I really do. 98% of my friends are still Mormons. What makes me angry and really mad is coming to the knowledge that they're being lied to as well.
Okay, so let's back up. So when did the cracks in your shelf start forming?
Well, when I first came to the United States and I went to the Salt Lake Temple and I entered, I think, the terrestrial room or something, I saw the, Masonry symbol right there on the top. And I remember that shocked me and I thought, what the heck? Well, that was a red flag, but I just put it in my shelf, I guess.
Yeah, something that I experienced in Guatemala is that you'd see Masonic lodges in towns. And so I actually had a convert in Guatemala who was like really into the Masons and actually was made Mormonism appealing for him. So is the Masonic Lodge something that's a strong influence in Brazil, or did you see it a lot in Brazil?
Oh no, we don't.
Okay,
No.
so why were the Masonic symbols? How did they even register for you? How did you even know what they meant then?
Because I hadn't heard about it, and but I thought, no, it's just similar, but it's not the same thing. And Joseph would never bring Masonry into the true gospel of Jesus Christ, ordinances and stuff like that. Masonry in Brazil, as far as I know, at least in my own environment, in my network, it was kind of a myth. You don't know much about it, if at all.
Sure.
And then when I saw that symbol right in the temple, I thought, this is really weird. But I put that in my shelf, and just didn't think much about it. But that raised, a red flag that made me feel really uncomfortable.
Okay. All right. So what was the next crack?
Well, I would talk to my husband about, okay, so if everything that they teach in the temple are an absolute truth, which I believe it is, all of a sudden I asked him and I said, how is that Peter, James, and John come to earth and they meet Adam and they give him the first token of the Aaronic priesthood or something like that, but they're spirits. And in Doctrine and Covenant says that if a spirit comes and visit you, they're not going to try to touch you because they're spirits. And that started bothering me for some reason.
Interesting.
I thought, that can make sense. And then my husband said, well, maybe that's just figurative. And I said, okay, what else is figurative here then? If we're not supposed to take these ordinances that are essential for your exaltation, what else should we take, figuratively? And that started bothering me. But again, bam, to the shelf.
Okay. Yeah, those are good questions. So you're starting to question. When do things start unraveling more seriously?
Well, as we were going to church, all of a sudden I started feeling extremely uncomfortable. I mean, I started having problems with my teenage kids all at once. And then I started blaming myself, like as a mom, if your kids don't have a good behavior, then it's your fault. You failed and teaching them and all that. And I started blaming myself for all that. And every time we left the church on Sundays, I would feel miserable. Anyway, I started praying about it. I came to a point that I said, okay, this is it. I cannot do it anymore. I failed. I failed as a wife because my first marriage ended. I failed as a mom. I'm not worth a thing. My self-esteem just went down below zero. And I thought, if I failed and if, I failed God, then if I'm already in hell, I might as well just go right away. I don't have to put up with anything else. And I got really depressed and I decided to take my life. I started planning, the details, how I was going to do that with no drama. And then I started praying and trying to convince God that was the best option I had at that moment. And I started saying, okay, I'm going to do this, but I'm telling you right now because I don't want to face you one day and have to tell you the very same story all over again. I was completely lost, John, completely lost. And then I remember one day I was feeling so down that in my prayer, I said to him, please give me the strength to stay alive for a couple more days because my son needs me badly right now. Just a couple more days. And then, strangely enough, many people have a very hard time to believe that, but I had that prompt, like, leave the church. I mean, clearly. And then I thought, of course, as a good TBM, I thought, this thought cannot be coming from God, because if this is the true church, how come I'm having this prompt? And then I hadn't decided to leave the church yet, but then one day I was listening to a podcast that had nothing to do with Mormonism whatsoever. It was about creativity and something. And they had Martha Beck over for an interview, and she talked about her book, Leaving the Saints, How I Lost the Mormons and Found My Faith. And that title really drew my attention, and I thought, wow, how I lost the Mormons and found my faith. And then I decided to get the book, and I started listening to the audiobook. And, she's Hugh Nibley's daughter.
Right.
And she was, telling me about things that she went through with him as a father and all that. And she talked about the papyrus, just myth papyrus. And I said, what? That wasn't translated? What's going on here? And then I decided I thought to myself, okay, if I had this prompt that I should leave the church, then I might as well just find out why, if that makes sense, why I should leave it then. And then I started listening to different podcasts, and more and more truth started coming out, like the polyandry thing, something that I had never heard about it. Those many times that the Book of Mormon was edited, the count about the first vision. And I was like, wait a minute, is this all a huge, big, fat lie? I'm out of here. And then I decided to leave the church. And it's funny because when I made the decision, I got rid of my garments. I felt, that dark, heavy, ugly cloud over my head. Bam, it dissipated. I felt better, and, I wanted to live, and I wanted to find out more. I wanted to get closer to God without nobody's intervention, like, religious leaders and stuff. And I came across a guy called John DeLann and a podcast, Mormon Stories. He became my hero. And Lindsay Park with Your Polygamy, Gay Mormon Stories. Even Naked Mormonism, Mormon Expositor. I couldn't get enough, and I still can't, because I feel like the more I learn, the more I want to know, the angrier I get. And it kind of validates my decision of leaving. That's the good part. But the bad part is that I just cannot put up with that. How can that be? I'm still trying to process all this crap. You know, it's unbelievable. And my family believes that. My husband does still. The people I love the most, except for my 2 kids, because they left the church before I did, they're still buying into it. And that bothers me deeply.
So your husband's still a believer.
He is a believer.
Is he happy with you doing this interview?
Well, I don't know if happy is the better word for that. Let's say that he's respectful. But yeah, he's okay with that.
Okay. And did your kids even care about the truth claim stuff, or was it just they were bored or disinterested, or, you know?
Well, I think they started feeling the abuse much earlier than I did. I remember one day my daughter coming to me and saying, "Mom, you're not going to believe this." She was, I think, 16 years old. She said, "The bishop interviewed me for a temple, for baptism in the temple, baptism for the dead. And he asked me if I had sex with my boyfriend. And I found that so uncomfortable." And she started coming to me and saying, "Mom, I just can't put up with the things that they teach in young women. They say that if they keep the commandments, if they do all right, they're going to marry in a castle, which is the temple, and they're going to be happy forever." And she said, "And I know it's not how it works because you did the best you could your whole life, and dad still cheated on you and all that." So she said, I just can't say amen to those things. And then she decided to leave, and I respected that. And my son, he started saying the same thing. He said, "Mom, I leave church feeling a piece of crap. There has to be something wrong there." He said, "I don't know what it is, but I just don't like it." And the pressure from their part was so strong that I had to say, "Okay, if you want to quit, then you quit." But
Wow. Were your kids happy to have moved from Brazil to the United States? Kind of, was it in their teen years that they moved?
yes, my son was 10 years old and my daughter was 13. They were happy and not happy at the same time because they didn't want to leave their friends in Brazil, but they also knew that they wouldn't get to have a very close relationship with their dad because he had moved out from the state. And they were kind of, half happy, half not very happy. But as we got here, they enjoyed it. They liked it.
It's interesting because it sounds like they weren't just, wanting to be lazy or just quit. It sounds like they weren't having a good experience as Mormons.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, yes.
Were they discriminated against because of their nationality?
Not at the church, no. At the school, yes. They would complain to me about that, about bullying at school.
Is this Jordan High School?
No, Sabrina went to Olympus High School.
Olympus High School.
Olympus, yeah.
Discriminated against there. But
being
not
a Latina.
But not necessarily by the church.
Oh, no, not at all. We never did. We never felt discriminated by the church at all.
Okay. All right. So for you, polyandry, multiple accounts of the first vision, Joseph Smith's polygamy. What about the Book of Mormon? You had read that 8 or 9 or however many times. Did you study the Book of Mormon, and did anything about that bother you?
Well, I never questioned it. To me, it was a book of scriptures, was based on, history, and I never questioned it. But since the first vision, to me, everything went down the drain right there. When I found out that the first vision hadn't happened the way it did, if anything happened there, nothing else did, made sense anymore. Because I said, okay, if he was a liar, he was a delusional, then everything else was a made up, because God would never talk and give him, a book of scriptures to translate, to a liar. So everything just went down.
Right. Okay. And so how long ago was that where you just decided it wasn't true? How
That was last year, in about October of last year, I'd say.
and does that make you feel vulnerable? You're from another country, you've now set up residency here, you've gotten married. Is there anything particular about being from another country that makes you maybe feel particularly vulnerable to have a faith crisis in that situation, or not?
Not really. I actually think I'm in a better position, because if I were to come out as a non-believer in Brazil, that would be really hard, because all my friends pretty much are LDS, and my family's there too. So I think it would have been much harder than here. My husband, he'd rather have me active in the church, but he respects and accepts my new position. So do my in-laws. So it's actually a little better than if I were in Brazil. So
Got it. Okay.
yeah.
So when you think about, again, I talked about this before, all the ways the church helped your family through all those years, and if you bought into the Brazilian idea that everything's better in America, now you're living in America, you're raising your kids in America, you're kind of living the dream, then what kept you from just saying, okay, the church may not be true, but oh my gosh, it's blessed my life and my family's life so much that I'm just going to kind of, maybe I won't stay active, but I'm still will always be forever grateful to Mormonism, and so I'm never going to say anything against it. What led to your kind of the level of anger, given that the church has benefited your family so much?
Well, I believed that. I mean, I followed every teaching the best I could. I mean, I will always be grateful to the Mormons for what they've done for me and my family, but not for the Mormonism, because that's not, Mormonism to me is the belief, is the way they run this life, this crap. So I want to, I can't keep it to myself. I have to tell my friends and people that I really love and care for what this is really all about. I cannot, because I had a very strong testimony. It was in my core since I was 9 years old. I cannot just look at it and say, whatever, who cares? I do care. I care, because that was important to me. That was in the center of my life. I went through all that spiritual abuse, all that pressure. I did so much, and I mean, my life would have been so different if I didn't have those kind of pressures in my life,
When you say spiritual abuse, what do you mean?
No matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, you are never good enough. Ever. And you can do 10 things right. If you do one thing wrong, you're gone. You're not good enough. And that's terrible.
And that's what led to your suicidality, is just feeling
yes. Oh,
so
yeah.
You're angry that you almost took your life because of the feelings of inadequacy and perfectionism.
Yes, but that was the rock bottom point. Before that, I had all that, I was so strict the way I was raising my kids. I expected so much from my first husband. So I believe, being that perfectionist affected my first marriage as well. So it affected my whole life, my relationship with my friends and family. So that's a huge deal. It's not something that I can just turn my back on and say, oh, whatever, who cares? I know people out there. I have friends in Fernopolis that I can tell how frustrated they look, like girlfriends. They look frustrated. They gave up on their careers for, you know, for becoming a stay-home mom, and you see the frustration, you know, and I for what? So I just cannot watch that and say, that's none of my business. I have to do something about it, although they don't have to believe me, but at least I did my part. I went out there and told them, you know.
Okay, so that takes us to kind of a little bit where you are now. So I've always wondered this, like, you know, the United States, in terms of like awareness, because of the CES letter, because of the podcasts, Mormon Stories and others, because of Mormon Think, you know, across Western Europe and the United States, awareness about the church's vulnerabilities or inaccuracies or deceptions around its truth claims, awareness is growing really strong. But I've always thought of Latin America as this sleeping giant, because it would seem to me, and maybe this doesn't quite apply to you, but it would seem to me like those in Latin America have particular skin in the game, because so many of those people, like we talked about earlier, whether you're Mexican, Guatemalan, you know, Peru, Chile, Uruguay, wherever, all these people have been told for generations that they're literal descendants of Laman and Lemuel, of Nephi. Same with Polynesia, Samoa, you know, etc., and New Zealand, etc. And so I imagine that it's particularly sensitive. And again, Native Americans in the United States, Chicanos, I imagine it's particularly personal to them that not only have they bought into a religious system that may not be true, but that in some ways their identities have been hijacked, and they've been told that they're descendants of people who are fictional characters. And so I've been thinking about, wow, maybe people in Latin America, you know, Polynesia, maybe they've got so much to worry about that, you know, if they were to find that out at some point, maybe they're not that interested. But I know for me, if I were told that I was the children of someone when I really wasn't, and I'm 30, 40 years old, and I find out that I'd been basing my entire identity on a lie, not just my worldview, but my actual identity, my self-concept, I imagine I would go ballistic. And I don't know. I have not been, you know, every once in a while, someone from Latin America or Brazil will reach out to me, but it's a few a year, really. And so on the one hand, it seems like a sleeping giant. On the other hand, I don't know. So talk a little bit about your desire to create a YouTube channel and whether or not you think the church is vulnerable here in terms of, you know, Latin Americans and others becoming aware of the truth claims. Would you sense that your friends back in Brazil even have heard of the CES letter and have even started to think about these issues, or would even care?
Nope. You know, I started doing the videos on YouTube because I mean, I was a member of the church for 35 years. I mean, almost 30 years only in Brazil. I never heard of anything like that. CS letter, multiple accounts of the first vision, whatever. And, you know, people in Brazil, at least, they have this tendency of just doing what the church wants them to do. If the church says, don't touch that book, don't watch that video because that's anti-Mormon material, they don't. I was one of them. I wouldn't dare. I wasn't interested on anything that anybody would have to say. But then I thought to myself, wait a minute, now I have access to all this information. I have access to the truth, and I'm not going to share. I was a member of the church, you know, like in Florianopolis, I lived there for 23 years or so. And I thought, people know me down there. They, you know, I never went inactive in the church. I thought, I have some credibility. Maybe if they hear from me, it might help a little bit, at least to spark their attention to to go after different literatures and try to find out about it. And then other than that, I mean, they don't care, and they feel bad just about the thought of going try to find out the history of the church in different materials other than those authorized and allowed by the church. So I'm having a huge response. I mean, of course, I had people mad at me, angry, and they send me, insulting messages and comments on my videos, but I don't care. I've had an overwhelming response in terms of, Vania, I didn't know that. Please keep on doing it. Keep on informing us and telling us everything you're finding out about. We don't have these books in Portuguese. We most of us don't speak English, and we need to know the truth and stuff like that. So it's been good to me as well, because I can canalize all my anger, my indignation. Like, are you serious? Did you guys just made this all up? I mean, the apostles and first presidency make that much money out of the church. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So I had to share it, and it's been way worth it. I hope I can, I think I already am kind of helping a few people to wake up for the truth. So
Yeah. So I just checked. There is a Portuguese version of the CES letter. I tried posting a link to that, and for some reason it didn't post. So Cody, if you're listening, if you want to go ahead and post links to both the Spanish and the Portuguese version of CES letter, I think that's interesting. I'm curious, Vania, if you were to send that link to friends and family back in Brazil, what would happen? Would they read it? Would they care? Would they just say this is anti-Mormon literature? Do they look at the church differently than maybe people in America do in terms of the importance, either openness to the truth claims or even concern about the truth claims? Have you even tried that?
do you mean the link for the CS letter?
Yeah. Have you seen that there's a Portuguese version of CES letter?
I did, and I think I posted a link on my video about the CS letter, and some people read it and they gave me a feedback about it. Yes, I've done that. So it all depends on what point of your testimony or of your faith you're at. Those that are already starting questioning down there, they're going to look at that and say, okay, I want to know what this is all about. Okay. But those people that are like I used to be, completely TBM all the way, they will not even watch the videos. I have friends that, even one of my sisters, they told me, they said, okay, Vania, I know you're doing this, but I haven't watched not one of your videos, and I will not watch them. I don't want to know what you have to say about it.
So in that sense, it's similar to the United States. There's people who are open and people who aren't open.
Yes, it all depends on what point of your faith you're at.
Is the CES letter translation, is it a quality translation? Does it?
Yes, it is. It is very accurate.
Okay, so they did a good job.
Yes, they did.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
So talk really quickly about your YouTube channel. Maybe we'll ask you to send me and Cody a link, and we can post it on mormonstories.org. But what are you doing on your YouTube channel? What are you trying to do?
So the first video that I made, I was talking about my own experience, why I decided to leave the church. And then I started talking about Joseph Smith, the Book of Mormon, polygamy, racism, the CS letter, the Mark Hoffman episode that I had never heard about it. To me, that's a proof that the prophets have no communication whatsoever with God or Christ or whatever. I'm doing a video this week about the homosexual issues, how the suicide rates have been skyrocket lately. I'm talking about discrimination. And every day I have many comments and people, I mean, I'd say 20% of them are, not happy about it and they would be rude to me and stuff, but 80% of the comments are positive. I had a message on my Facebook this morning from a lady. She said, Vania, after I started watching you, I decided to leave the church. And I'd like for you to suggest me some more books that I could read about the history. She can read English, so that's easier. So people are reaching out to me, and that makes me happy, John, because, I think, oh my gosh, if this is just lie, what's the point? Like a friend of mine came to me and said, okay, Vania, I know you're doing that, but, we live in a world that is so bitter, so hard, and people have some hope there. And you're taking out their hope. And, my response to that was, okay, the problem is that, to me, hope and lies cannot fit in the same context. I said, yes, you better have hope that will be fulfilled. These people are literally paying installments for their salvation. And there's nothing there. So what's the point? That's not hope. That's deceit. And then, our conversation stopped there because he doesn't want to, he doesn't agree with what I'm doing, period. But that's the thing. I feel good about it. I think I'm helping a few people down there.
What if someone were to say, Vania, you're not, the church takes people who are really struggling and gives them, just like with your mom, right? That she was a divorcee, she was struggling, she was lost, and the church gives them community, it gives them morality, it gives them structure. Even if it's not true, it's not just about giving them hope, it's about giving them a better life. Do you believe that the Mormon church in Brazil gives people a better life than they would otherwise have? And if so, do you ever feel guilty that you might deprive people who could really use a better life from having access to the church's structure?
Well, I don't believe in a better life based upon lies. I believe in a better life and good relationships based upon truth. And the church doesn't help people all that much down there, as maybe, some people can think they do up here. Mm-hmm. It's more of a community, sense of community and community support than anything else. And you can find that in many other institutions that won't be lying to you that bad. What I think, and what I hope will happen is that the church will feel the pressure so hard someday that they will have to come out and tell us the truth. And say, okay, guys, guess what? Joseph did this and that was not okay. It wasn't God that told him to marry married women. It wasn't God that told him to marry 14-year-old girls, like abusing them and scaring them and threatening their own salvation if they didn't marry him. Okay, guys, here's the thing. It was a big mistake to deny the priesthood to the blacks back then. Okay, guys, here's the thing. We are just men. We're not perfect, okay? We have some good advices to you, but don't buy into everything because we're just as imperfect as you are. If they would just come down from the cloud and put themselves in the level of just human beings, subject to error, to mistakes, that would be great. But they put themselves in a position that they are equals to God. Okay, we speak with God. Whatever we say, it's God's will. And then they come and they do what they did to the blacks, and now they come out and do what they're doing to the homosexuals, and they don't care if there are people out there taking their own lives because they feel worthless, and there's no room for them in the plan of salvation. So I question this claim that, the church does so much good. Is it fair to take that away from people? I'm not sure about that right now, honestly, because there are relationships being destroyed out there. There are people killing themselves because of these claims. They're based upon lies. So I question that claim.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. It's hard, but I think you speak a lot of common sense that, you know, is is any life built on a lie sort of the good life, and we make assumptions sort of from an arrogant American perspective that, oh, all those south of the border people, they're so lucky to be part of our wonderful American church, and all those uneducated poor people are now having a life. And I think there's probably something really insulting and degrading about that. Even if Brazilians themselves think everything in America is better, is that true? And are they better off following the American way? I think there's probably a lot of arrogance in that, and even us buying into that bias. What do you think?
Yes, I think so. And let me tell you one thing. Maybe Americans have that mindset that, oh, the church does so much good for people from third world countries. Actually, I would say that they exploit us more than they help us. Because, John, I mean, right now we have many temples in Brazil. I'm not sure how many right now. I don't even care. But for many, many years, we'd have only one temple in São Paulo. People would sell their furniture, John, to be able to afford a trip to go to the temple.
Right.
Excuse me, is that help? People, people are sacrificing their time. I mean, it's not like here, that you come from your mission, you still get to go to college and get married and all that stuff. In Brazil, because of the situation, the financial situation especially, when you come from your mission, either you serve in the church or you go to college. And of course, as a faithful Mormon, you're gonna not even think about college, and you're gonna serve in the church. My husband was one of them. They're called as bishops at their 24, 23 years old. As soon as they get married, bam, they're called as a bishop in small towns. So again, it's more of a sacrifice than a help being a member of the church. Honestly, maybe if I saw that the church does more good than the opposite to my people in Brazil, maybe I would think about not even doing these videos. But since I know that they sacrifice so much of their time with their family, they sacrifice their talents, their money, everything they have for a lie, I cannot just stay quiet and not do anything about it.
Yeah, that's powerful. The idea that the church exploits people in foreign countries, that's something I hadn't really. I'd love to even dig into that in another episode, because I think that's kind of taking me back a little bit. I'm going to read just a couple of comments from our listeners. Sophie writes, 2 of my siblings married Bolivians. They also believe they're Lamanites hardcore. So it looks like there are some countries that do and some that don't really buy into the narrative. And it looks like Bolivia is definitely one that buys in heavily to the Lamanite narrative. Caleb writes, having served a mission in Brazil, this is super fascinating for me. Great story. So he's really appreciating what you're teaching. I like what Leah writes because it sort of shows the universality. She's from the States, I'm assuming, and she writes, yes, my life would have had such a different path without the church pressuring me. Constant guilt and misery when you and each day praying and admitting everything you didn't do good enough. Then when the church is gone, it is a sigh of relief and fresh air. Happiness is not in the church. And even though I love my kids, I was a talented cook and left my career because of the constant years of being told what my future role was. Being a useful citizen in the workforce until you are to have kids and you are told to stay in the home. My talents went to waste and a career faded away. So Leah is connecting with you. Even though you had those experiences, Vania, in Brazil, she had those in the U.S. And it just shows that, I guess, the guilt and the social pressure and the patriarchy, frankly, and the devaluing of women really is universal to Mormonism, not just a U.S. experience.
Absolutely.
Derek writes, I like her commitment to truth. So Derek loves it that you care about truth so much.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to be posting a YouTube link to your a link to your YouTube channel. We just posted it in the comments, but we'll also post it on the main page. I kind of think we need a Mormon Stories Portuguese. What do you think?
That would be amazing. One of my friends told me, she said, please do something about that. I said, I wish I had time to do it, but that would be awesome, John. Wow.
All right. So if any of our listeners really speak Portuguese, care about the Brazilian saints or the Portuguese saints, and want to maybe team up in partnership with, with anyone else who's interested, but definitely Vanya. Maybe we have a Mormon Stories Germany. I don't know if people know that.
Oh, wow.
But maybe we can get a Mormon Stories Portuguese or Brazil or whatever, and just really get the word out. And, for me, the goal is never to take people away from the church, honestly, because I think that's a personal decision. But like you, I think everybody has the right to learn about the truth about the organization that they are a part of, and to decide for themselves with all the information if they want to remain a member. And I think that just at the face, the truth claims, the history, and the damage that the church causes, people deserve to talk about it and to know about it, regardless of whether they decide to stay or not.
That's what I emphasize in my videos. I say, I'm not here to try to convince you to leave the church whatsoever. I just think you have the right to know the truth, and then you make an informed decision. That's all.
Okay, that's what you're about, Vanya.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this has been a fascinating episode. I'm curious if there's anything you want to share about either what you believe now or how you're living your life now away from the church. Are you happier? If so, are there things that you're doing that make you happier, that make you less depressed, less suicidal? Talk about what your life is like now and contrast it with when you were at your darkest just a few years ago.
Well, I hadn't realized until now how bad about myself I used to feel, how inadequate, how I was always beating me up all the time. I felt as if I were, running on a treadmill, and I did not have the right to slow down. I had to do more and more and more, and I came to a point that I was literally dying. Right now, John, I feel like, I turned off the treadmill and I decide when I want to run, what pace I want to do it. It's in my own hands. What I feel right now is that my life belongs to myself, to nobody else. Nobody has the right to tell me what I dress, how I dress, what I read, what I touch, how I feel, how I interpret scriptures or anything else. It's in my own hands. I found out that I'm an individual. My life belongs to me and only. And today is all I have. I used to live in a way that I was always looking ahead, always expecting something ahead. When something wasn't good here, I thought, okay, that's okay, because in the next life, that's going to be fixed. Now I work harder to fix whatever I can. Today, I take one day at a time. I take life the way it is, with no, delusions, with no promises. Now I know there's no promises. And I feel, entitled to make my own decisions based on my own conscience and not anybody else's. So it feels good. I feel light. I feel fresh. I don't have any suicidal thoughts whatsoever. I know, our lives can end at any moment, and we should make the best out of it right now.
And the church likes to tell people, especially general authorities, that they can't be happy without the church, that they'll be miserable, the people who leave are bad or broken people, and that the only joy you can really find that's meaningful is in the church. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I'm here to tell you and everybody else that that's a big fat lie, just like the other things they teach. 99% of what they say is just based upon lies, and that's not true. I mean, you just cannot see how unhappy you are as a Mormon until you leave the church. I mean it. I mean, they look happy. I thought I was, and now that I'm out of it, I think, oh my gosh, this is happiness. Freedom is happiness. I wasn't free. Nobody's brain is free in the church. We are brainwashed big time. So it's so much better out here, and that's exactly why they say what they say. Don't leave because your life will be miserable. And with that claim, they keep thousands and thousands of people in that institution for years and years without even trying and looking what's out there outside of the box.
Yeah. That's what they do. Okay, so just really quickly, how about, has your relationship at all has your leaving the church impacted your relationship with your children that were struggling or not?
It did, on a positive way, though.
How?
My daughter that is now 20 years old, she comes to me and she says, Mom, you're so much nicer right now. It's so much easier to have a conversation with you right now. I'm so glad that you made this decision. Finally, my son, comes to me and says, Mom, I knew it all along. He says, I don't know the details about the church, but I don't have to. My heart just told me all the time that wasn't a good, safe place for us to be. And they, it had an impact on the positive sense.
Wow. So it's brought you a little closer to your kids, actually, leaving the church.
Absolutely. I was so perfectionist, and I was expecting perfection from my kids, from my first husband. It was a nightmare. I never saw that until I left.
But now, how has it affected your relationship with your believing husband?
Well, sometimes he kind of comes to me and says, oh, I wonder if we're still going to be together in the next life, since now you left the church, and I tell him, I say, okay, let's just imagine that that's not the way they say it is. And listen, I'm still the same person. I'm the very same person. I'm not going out there as they say you're going to do when you leave the church. I'm not going out there getting drunk and doing drugs and cheating on you and whatever. I'm the very same person. That's my personality. I don't need to be in the church to be a good person. And do you really think that God will separate us just because I left the church? And whenever you want, you can, learn from the sources I am learning, and you can kind of come to your own conclusions. But he hasn't done that yet. So, for now, he's just respecting my position, and that hasn't affected our relationship at all.
Well, that's great.
Yes.
I'm really happy for you guys, because that's not how it always is.
Yes, I know that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Vania, I'm going to ask you to do something a little bit different. This idea just came to me, but let's just say that there are some Brazilians or people who speak Portuguese who have been listening. I would love you to give some final comments or thoughts to people in Portuguese who happen to be listening. If you had, I don't want to call it a testimony, but just some final thoughts to share in your native Portuguese tongue, will you share it and let our listeners just hear your thoughts in Portuguese? Is that all right? And take as long as you want.
Absolutely. Okay, let's get it started.
All right.
Então, pessoal, eu estou aqui compartilhando com vocês a minha história. E o porquê que eu deixei a igreja. Porque, infelizmente, ela não é o que ela alega ser. Não é. Se fosse, eu estaria lá, eu jamais teria saído. E eu saí porque eu estava literalmente sendo escravizada mentalmente, abusada espiritualmente. E muitos de nós, muitos de vocês que estão me escutando estão passando pelo mesmo abuso espiritual e emocional e nem percebem, nem se dão conta disso. Eu não me dei conta, eu levei 35 anos para perceber. Mas depois que você sai, o alívio é muito grande, a paz é muito grande. Você não tem paz como você pensa ter quando você está lá se sujeitando a todo esse abuso. Então, vale a pena dar uma olhada na história, vale a pena pegar a literatura e ver o que ela tem para dizer. Não são materiais anti-mormon, são materiais confiáveis, para que você possa então tomar uma decisão baseada em fatos e não em emoções, porque é muito mais seguro. Obrigada. Okay, that's it.
What'd you say?
Well, I told them that the reason why I'm doing this is because the church is not what it claims to be. And I needed to share with them the truth so they can make an informed decision. I suggested for them to take a look at literature, and come across Fan Brody, Grant Palmer, and others, and take a look and see what these people have to say, because it's worth it. So it was basically it.
I love it. Angela writes, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that I'm hearing this in my language." So I think, isn't there something special about hearing this in your own language?
It's awesome. It's much deeper. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's great. All right. Well, Vania, I really appreciate you reaching out to me back that day I spoke at Salt Lake City Oasis. And I've been wanting to interview for a long time, and I appreciate your patience as we took a little bit of time to make that happen. But you're first in our multiple part series on losing the Lamanites, and I think this is a great opener.
Awesome. It was an honor to meet John. You're my hero. I hope you know that.
Oh, well. Raise your bar. Raise your bar.
As you are for many, many others out there.
Oh,
We're really grateful for your great job, yours and your wife's. You guys are awesome.
Oh, well, thanks, Vania. Well, I love what you're doing, and listeners, check in. We'll promote this. I hope people who have friends in Brazil or Portugal, I hope they'll share. And anyone who speaks Portuguese who wants to be a part of Mormon Stories Portuguese or Mormon Stories Brazil, I hope people will volunteer and we'll make that happen. But Vania, you're really courageous to speak out. And so I just want to thank you again for coming on Mormon Stories.
Thank you for having me, John. It's great.
All right, listeners, I want to thank everyone. We had a large group on Facebook Live. We had some great comments and questions. We had one other person say that, this is from Bibiana. She's saying that she's from Argentina and that they never saw themselves as Lamanites. So that's interesting that there are countries like Argentina and Brazil that definitely don't associate with being Lamanites, but then there's countries like Bolivia and Peru and Guatemala and Mexico that absolutely do. And so I didn't know that. I'm embarrassed that I didn't know that, but now I know. Anyway, thanks to all those who tuned in on Mormon Stories Live, on Facebook Live. You guys made this a better interview. I want to thank Cody Layton for producing this podcast and helping with it. Amy Grubbs is always doing crucial work behind the scenes. They make everything we do at the Open Stories Foundation better. I want to thank everyone who donates to support Mormon Stories and the Open Stories Foundation. If you do and appreciate or value this work, we just really appreciate you taking the time to support us. 10 or 25 bucks a month can really make a difference. It just takes a minute to subscribe. We want to thank everyone who makes it possible, and please encourage anyone who appreciates this content. If anybody wants to sponsor a podcast, either in Portuguese or in any other language, that's a perfect sort of project that someone can support. let's say you want it in Korean or in Chinese or in Japanese or Spanish. We don't even have a Mormon Story Spanish, Espanol yet. So if anybody believes in this stuff and wants to make it happen, I just want to say that's what the Open Stories Foundation is about. We will take support, financial support. We will take, we will take anything, volunteers, and we'll be doing good to sort of support Mormons throughout the world in their transition. So thanks again for everyone who's joined us. Thanks again, Vania, and please tune in again for another episode of Mormon Stories Podcast. Thanks again, Vania.
Thank you, John.
All right, and listeners, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys again soon. Take care.